Hey, it's Kevin Hart with my pal Catherine O'Hara.
No, I'm more of a bestie.
Kinda, sorta. Right now, we're cash backing on everything we need for the holidays with Chase Freedom Unlimited.
I got some ornaments and lights.
'Tis the season to cash back.
And lots of wrapping paper.
Maybe you're cash backing on a present bought for me?
About that.
I know you're kidding.
Am I?
How do you cash back? Learn more at chasefreedom.com. Chase, make more of what's yours.
Restrictions and limitations apply. Cards are issued by JPMorgan Chase Bank and a member FDIC.
Blue Wire.
First pick in the 1991 NBA draft, the Charlotte Hornets select Larry Johnson from University.
I'm not supposed to be here, man. A lot of people from where I'm from, don't make it.
Charlotte, we're back.
Welcome back to another Buzz Beat. This is Richie, and please make sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to our episodes. Also, check out buzzbeat.substack.com for information about BuzzBeat Plus, where you can get ad-free episodes among other perks. On today's episode, I will be joined by Lee for this post-game recap between the Clippers and the Hornets. Hornets fell 119 to 117, a close game towards the end there, and the Hornets drop another one here at home. Lee, how's it going?
It's great. Honestly, like a fun game, and I feel like I haven't been able to say that a ton this year. I mean, obviously there were still struggles. There were still, some blown assignments. There were still some tough plays late from the Hornets that kind of let the Clippers back into this game. I mean, the Hornets actually kind of controlled it for a lot of the second half. But I guess I'll just end this our little back and forth introduction by saying the young bench core was really fun to watch today, and I'm sure we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we could definitely get into those players because, for the most part, even though the game did not end in a win, and I know that some fans don't really care about the wins and losses right now, at least it was entertaining for portions of the game, especially in the second half. So we are going to keep this short and sweet and get into some of our instant reactions to this game against the Clippers. If you were a LA fan, you guys got some good news as the status of Kawhi and PG changed from being up in the air before the game to being able to suit up and play. So going into the night, I thought this game would have like a very similar feel to the Bucks game from Saturday, especially if those two didn't play, because it could have been another undermanned team that had a big body down low that eats up a lot of space in the paint and defends the basketball very well. Very similar to what Brook Lopez does for the Bucks. You've got Zubac, who doesn't allow a lot of clean looks at the rim, and his presence can be felt in a very similar way. So with Charlotte, a team that likes to get to the rim, it didn't feel like a combination that was going to end well. They were going to have to be competitive in ways that they're not normally making shots. And I think that, you're always going to miss LaMelo, DSJ, and Cody, but I felt like maybe Gordon's mid-range game would have been pretty useful in this game. But I wanted to start with PJ Washington, mainly because he had a game against Milwaukee that he probably would like to forget about when he went 0-13. So you have that going against him, and he's also a player that doesn't start the games off too strong. He is typically a player that plays better in the fourth quarter, and he had a nice mixture of how he got his points. He had catch and shoot three-pointers, he had pull-up three-pointers, he had driving layups, he had off the dribble step backs in the mid range. He even had like a running bank shot late in the game. It's games like this, Lee, where you see the flashes of versatility on the offensive end, and you get a little bit like unreasonably optimistic about his future and his ceiling and what he can turn into. But when you just have those polar opposites of how he played against Milwaukee and how he played against the Clippers tonight, that's where the inconsistency comes in. But he does finish with 26 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists. So feel free, Lee, to take this anywhere you want. But PJ Washington was one of the better players, if not the best player for the Hornets tonight.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, one thing I tweeted about during the game was, the PJ Washington kind of off the dribble development and or adventure, kind of depending on how you want to look at it. It's still very hit or miss by my observations from a night to night basis. I mean, you kind of laid it out perfectly, contrasting, his performance against Milwaukee versus his performance tonight. On net, generally on net, I do think I still believe that PJ Washington has improved as a ball handler, as an isolation creator, and as like a create his own shot development arc. I think on net he's still improved, but just to reiterate, like it's still just such a night to night adventure. There's not a ton of consistency there yet. But nights like tonight, like you said, Richie, nights like tonight, when PJ Washington, he goes 11 for 21 from the floor, 4 of 10 from three. Like you said, he was just getting in a variety of ways. He had a couple post ups. He had a couple kind of isolation, like shake, dribble, pull up jumpers. Obviously, he had the three going a little bit. He was also distributing some tonight, like beating his guy off the dribble, a couple little dump downs, a kick out here or there. Like he just kind of had a complete offensive game. And this is why he, minus all the guys that haven't played, like taking all the guys who haven't played out of the equation and just looking at this roster now, I do think he's probably our best all-around player and certainly our best asset because of his age. Again, of the guys that are playing right now. So awesome night from PJ. I'm glad you brought him up. I certainly wanted to talk about him tonight, and it was a great game for him. So good to kind of get it out of the way early.
Yeah, and let me interject here about PJ and just in general, and we can have a conversation about this because I saw you tweeted about this towards the end of the game where obviously Hornets Twitter are clamoring for anything other than just playing traditional centers to end the game. And PJ Washington, I don't know how many minutes, 25, 30 minutes, like in total this season that he's played at the 5 in all.
I get real quick, but yeah.
I think, and I mentioned this on the solo pod against the Bucks, but when you have a player like Brook Lopez, you have a player like Zubac where these centers just take away shots at the rim and they're just going to drop and they're going to basically say, hey, if you can make that mid-range shot, go for it. If you can try to attack me and score over me, go for it. And then you have the combination of the Hornets just not being a good 3-point shooting team right now. So driving and kicking, sure, that could help. But if you don't have shooters on that end, you wonder, first off, when Zubac is in the game, to draw him out, like you play Nick Richards, you play Mason Plumlee, that's not doing it. Like he's not going to come out and respect that shot, even though Plumlee did hit a left-handed shot, mid-range shot in this game. PJ Washington would be a guy that could draw a Brook Lopez or some kind of center like Zubac where, you're going to make him pay for dropping that low. And even when the Clippers went small, like they put Batum at the 5 or Marcus Morris at the 5, you can't have Nick Richards and Mason Plumlee on the opposite end to where they're having to be that versatile big, going through screens, switching, running out on closeouts. It's just not something that is going to be successful on a consistent basis. And the funniest thing, I guess it's not funny, but you're playing with a true 5, and I tweeted this to end the game. The Hornets are up to 117, 115, and the Clippers tie the game on a second chance point. So the one advantage that you think you would have with the rebounding aspect, they don't get it. And they tie the game up, and Kawhi scores the final 4 points for the Clippers. And I think the tying basket really was like the killer there because they did get the stop, but they weren't able to get the rebound. So I don't know what it is that Clifford is waiting for in terms of playing PJ at the 5. Like, would it solve all the issues? No, but I think it's something that he just hasn't really even attempted to try.
Well, if you're like me and you're wondering what the heck to buy for holiday gifts, consider the Virginia Lottery's Holiday Scratchers or a ticket for Virginia's New Year's Millionaire Raffle. The Holiday Scratchers are beautiful and a lot of fun and are the perfect gifts for the adults in your life. Also, the new year coming up means that it is time for Virginia's New Year's Millionaire Raffle. Raffle tickets are a great gift, but no one would blame you if you kept those tickets hidden somewhere for yourself. If you want to do a little something extra for yourself, I recommend going to VALottery.com. That's VALottery.com and playing the online games when you get a chance. They're perfect for when you're in line at the store or you're waiting for everyone to show up to the party. Whatever your holiday tradition, Virginia lottery games are fun for all of the adults on your list, including yourself. Lottery games are not for minors. For game odds and information, visit VALottery.com.
The NBA season is underway, and it's the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in free bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel has all your favorite bets, from the money line to point spreads to player props. You can even combine your bets for a chance at an even bigger payout with a same-game parlay. Plus, with live betting, you'll get updated odds on games that have already started. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. So download FanDuel today using promo code BLUEWIRE to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Make every moment more this season with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. 21 or older and physically present in New York. First online real money wager only. Refund issued as non-withdrawable free bets that expires in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. That's 467-369.
No, he hasn't. I mean, look, it's 56 possessions all season. I mean, that's basically nothing. You know, someone, you know, a listener on Twitter kind of proposed the theory that Clifford is not like comfortable enough with the rotation around a PJ at the 5 lineup, and like I think that's like a fair point, but at the same time, like there are configurations that you could play with here with PJ at the 5. Like you could close games with PJ at the 5. I think, you know, Spencer's theory that he's bandied about is also interesting. Like it's almost Clifford's kind of like covert way of leaning towards losing close games at the end. Because I mean, you know, like this kind of, I mean, and look, I know there are some fans that won't want to hear this, and I am not mad at any Charlotte Hornets fan that does not want to tank and that still holds some optimism in their heart that when this team gets healthy, there's still enough time left. You know, we're only 5.5 or 6 games out of 8th place. Like I don't think that's a completely insane thing to say. And I know that some fans won't like this. So I'm trying to like extend an olive branch there, but this kind of is the perfect loss, you know, for a team that is frankly in the top 5 pick sweepstakes right now. You lose a super close competitive game against a good Western Conference playoff team, and all of the young guys that you played showed flashes and contributed. So it's like it's the double doozy of young guys contributing, not getting blown out, and losing a super close game for the bigger picture. So and again, I know some fans won't like that, but that's just kind of how I feel at the moment.
Yeah, and not to bag too hard on Richards and Plumlee just not being an answer, but you know, I think Clifford has got to try PJ at the 5, and you know, and Plumlee is an interesting player because I mentioned his left-handed shot, and that's, I mean, I got to give him credit because as a right-handed player, you naturally put your right foot in front of your left foot when you're driving the ball or when you're dribbling, but to have to switch that to your left foot being in front of your right foot to now switch and shoot with your left hand, I do think that's kind of impressive. I mean, I guess shooting 36% from the free throw line with your right hand is probably not impressive, but the fact that he's able to kind of change that up. But yeah, at some point, maybe you're showcasing Mason. Maybe you're showcasing Kelly Oubre too. To your point, Lee,
yeah,
like,
that's another fair theory.
Yeah, it's the perfect combination. It's a watchable game. It's a competitive game. It's a fun game during certain spurts, but they still lose the game and approach the tankathon numbers a little bit better in that respect. I don't know where else you want to go with this. So we can talk about the young guys because you've mentioned them a couple of times. I think my favorite duo right now is Byrce McGowens and Kai Jones. Like just when they're out on the court together, Not that they're like, putting up these crazy numbers, but between both of them tonight, they had 8 points together. So it's nothing, it's nothing crazy here. But Byrce McGowens is a guy, and we've talked about this too with the Summer League pods. Like, he is just assertive.
Yep.
And he knows what he wants to do. He gets to the basket. He drives to the basket. He's not second guessing himself. And I think one of the better plays tonight actually wasn't with the ball in his hands at all. It was I think it was in the second quarter where his guy, it might have been Kawhi. They just kind of, or maybe it was PG, one of the two, lost him. And he just basket cuts for a layup in the first half. And so just stuff like that, like heady plays that you're seeing out of Byrce McGowens, and just him fearlessly attacking the rim. And then you got Kai Jones, who's just all over the place, running like a madman, trying to crash the offensive glass. Like you mentioned this on a previous episode, like he's out there trying to compete, trying to make the most of his opportunity. And it's just a fun watch. And three times in the season, he has hit a like hanging mid-range shot. And you can find all three on my Twitter: versus Minnesota, versus Philadelphia, and then tonight against the Clippers. It is not anything that I thought that he would have in his game at this point in his season. And he doesn't really have a shot, but he has hit 3 of those shots, which to me have just been the most surprising things. But those two players, McGowens and Kai Jones, when I see them on the court together, at the very least, you're going to get energy.
That's right. The Kai Jones, the fadeaway leaner, or whatever you want to call it, that you've been doing a great job of clipping whenever it shows its face. Tonight, it was after doing a double crossover move and then spin move. So like he attacked from the top of the key, crossed one way, crossed the other, spun back towards the lane, and then hit that leaner. I mean, it certainly looked a little goofy and a little uncoordinated, but he did pull off like essentially a downhill isolation dribble attack move into a score. I think it was on Terrence Mann. And yeah, I mean, look, like Clifford didn't really have any other choice tonight, but it was Kai Jones. And I tweeted about this too. It's like, this team's so strange because, Ball, Martin, Hayward, Dennis Smith Jr., they've missed tons and tons of games, all of them. And obviously Bridges, isn't even with the team, and we have no idea what his future is going to be. And still somehow, and by the way, Mark Williams is in Greensboro, and still somehow, and by the way, Bouknight is just like out of the rotation. And still somehow, some way, this team has like an interesting, fun, energetic young core when you throw out McGowens, Maledon, Richards, Kai Jones, and even McDaniels, who's still a young player. So that's the bright side. That's the optimistic side, I think, is that this team has a bunch of young, kind of toolsy, interesting wings and bigs. And even Maledon, who, combo guard, point guard, however you want to kind of classify him. Like, they're all interesting in certain ways. Kai, not only that little kind of like isolation dribble move to the fadeaway he pulled today, he also had a play, I believe it was in the second half, and I believe it was off a defensive rebound where he pushed in the open floor off the dribble himself and made a nice little like feed pass to a streaking teammate that laid the ball in. So like I've alluded to some of these kind of like dribble playmaking, skillful things that Kai Jones flashed in his college days. And the flashes are more limited because he's being asked to play a more limited role in the NBA, as he should be. But there still are those moments of like, yes, the energy is incredible, the athleticism, the length, the offensive rebounding, all that is where he's going to, butter his bread, so to speak. But he does have some uncovered skill game that I think we'll start to see a little bit more of here and there. Of all these guys, you could probably argue me either way between McGowens and Kai Jones, but like, I think Kai Jones actually we might actually have something here. And that's really interesting and fun. So I agree, Richie. Like, I think those are the two main guys to talk about. McGowens and Richie was Bouknight available tonight? Could he have played?
He was available. He had a DNP CD, so he was the only available player that did not play.
Yeah. So essentially, what that tells you, and it's kind of been slowly moving this way, but at least for the moment, I don't think Bouknight will necessarily be buried for the rest of the year. But at least for the moment, it tells you that Maledon and McGowens are both ahead of them in the rotation. And, unfortunately, because of the draft capital the Hornets expended on Book Knight, that unfortunately that is the right decision right now. Like, they're just more effective players.
Mm-hmm. And Theo didn't necessarily have like an awesome game tonight, but he had this one sequence that was just crazy where he had the block on Terrence Mann, and then he gets the steal, and then he drives coast to coast for the layup. So, yeah, I don't think there's any reason why he shouldn't be playing over Book Knight. And to your previous point about Kai, like, I was actually pretty low on Kai coming out of Summer League and heading into the season, and I was like selling stock on Kai. Not that I think that he's like fully turned the corner, but I think right now, if you were to ask me like, whose stock are you buying, Kai Jones or James Bouknight? I don't think there's much of a question right now who you would want to buy, and I think that's Kai Jones. The only other player that I want to mention tonight is Terry Rozier. He was probably the most influential player when it comes to kind of turning the tide for this team in the third quarter, especially where he had 13 points, which I believe was a high in a quarter for any Charlotte Hornets player this season, scoring 13. And he also scored in a variety of ways. He had a one-legged bank shot as well, like PJ, and just getting shots any way that he can. And I want to get your thoughts on this before we wrap, but in terms of his like role this year, in terms where he is playing mostly at the point guard position because of the injuries to LaMelo Ball and obviously Dennis Smith Jr. as well. Do you think that, him playing with the ball in his hands and giving the ball up immediately, and kind of getting him in that off ball position, I personally don't feel that that's the same thing as him just playing off ball where he doesn't have to bring the ball up the court. So I do think LaMelo Ball is going to help this team tremendously when it comes to a lot of different things, but I think he's going to help Terry Rozier in terms of his three-point shooting, where Rozier has kind of been up and down in terms of like creating that gravity for himself because he's been asked to bring the ball up the court, and it's very hard to kind of get that ball rolling and the head of steam going when he comes off those screens and stuff like that. You're just not seeing a lot of those actions run for him in the normal traditional sense that you're seeing Rozier, because the Hornets are a team that, one, doesn't like to shoot a lot of threes, and two, when they do shoot them, they don't make a lot of them. Tonight they did a little bit better than they did against the Milwaukee Bucks, shooting 12 of 34. But I think this team really needs some gravity from players like Terry Rozier. But I think when you use them as a point guard, you're just really not getting that same effect. But I do want to applaud him for, scoring in ways that are just a little bit different for him. And he was the one that gave the 2-point lead late in the game with that baseline jumper. But obviously, Kawhi scored the final 4 points.
No, yeah. I mean, I think that's perfectly diagnosed. Like, Rozier at the point guard rotation net rating was actually decent last year, but I believe that it was decent because it was limited, because it was more spotty. When you heap a ton more volume on him as a primary playmaker, I just don't think it's sustainable. Like from a rotation, standpoint. And yeah, obviously, like, you can go all the way back to Terry Rozier arriving in Charlotte, the sign and trade for Kemba Walker, where he is kind of, looked at as coming in as replacing Kemba Walker in the lineup at point guard. Little did we know Devontae Graham was going to emerge as like a real rotation NBA point guard, and Rozier slid off the ball where he exists as his best self. So he's had Devontae Graham and he's had LaMelo Ball during his time in Charlotte, and it's well documented that he's had become one of the best off-ball catch-and-shoot three-point shooters on planet Earth, frankly. Career years, every year in Charlotte until this year from a shooting efficiency standpoint. I think it literally is as simple as 2 + 2 = 4. Like, Terry Rozier cannot exist as his best self right now because he does have to shoulder playmaking load, and that's going to absolutely crater his efficiency. And that's what's happening. And like, I think the injuries play a small part. Like, he's been a little banged up here or there, so he hasn't quite been himself. And if you remember last year, he actually started really slow from a shooting standpoint last year, maybe a month or two into the season. And I remember us all kind of being like, yeah, he'll probably go like, he'll have a 6-week stretch where he shoots like 60% from three. And sure enough, his numbers ended up being right there last year from the previous year. So I completely, totally agree. And I think it's well diagnosed that like, if and when they can get LaMelo back healthy, you will all of a sudden see better shooting numbers from Rozier.
Yeah. Any other final thoughts on this game or this team at this point in the standings? I know that I'm just taking a look at Tankathon right now, and they are 7-17, and they are, the same amount of losses as Houston, but one more win. But Houston is actually, as we speak, up by 1 against the 76ers. So if the Rockets do win tonight, they will be tied for Charlotte for the 4th best odds in terms of that Wemby sweepstakes. So.
Yeah, well, and the Spurs have entered the chat too, by the way. They started off like, I think, 6-4 or something, and then they lost like 10 straight at one point. So I think it was an earlier pod where I was like, yeah, I think only like Detroit and Houston can really out-tank Charlotte if they really want to try. And I think that I think I left out San Antonio because they had that hot start, but they are like clearly one of, if not the worst rosters in the league. So the Spurs are fully involved at this point.
All right, we're going to go ahead and wrap here. I think we did a good job of quickly getting to all the talking points from this game. The Hornets did have a great third quarter, outscoring the Clippers 36-21, but the Clippers kind of reversed that in the fourth quarter, outscoring the Hornets 35-27. We did avoid overtime, which Lee and I were kind of secretly praying for here, so we didn't have to wait a little bit longer to pod after this game. So we appreciate you guys tuning in to another Buzz Beat. For Lee, I am Richie. We will talk to you guys later. Go Hornets.
Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.